Panigale, the Ninja, the Fireblade. Now these are all very well-known names in the biking industry, but the Hayabusa, now that name really sticks out because it is by far one of the most legendary motorcycles ever to have been created. In fact, when the bike was first launched in 1999, it was the fastest production motorcycle on the planet. And for 20 years, that bike went nearly unchanged because it was the engine that was such a phenomenal masterpiece. It was such an advancement in technology that it just didn't need any tweaking. Well, here we are with the all-new third generation Hayabusa. And there are some updates, and of course, the engine has been reworked. So let's see what this new Hayabusa has to offer.
You're watching the autoX YouTube channel. You can also get your daily dose of all things automotive on our website, autox.com, and follow us on social media. Don't forget to check out our monthly magazine and make sure to hit the bell and subscribe button so you don't miss a thing.
Here's a fun fact for you guys. The Hayabusa is actually named after a falcon in Japan. In fact, it's one of the fastest birds on the planet. And that's why Suzuki was inspired by that bird, because it could actually fly and dive at a speed of almost 300 kilometers per hour. That's almost the same speed that this bike could go in the past. The bike right here also can reach that speed, but it's only 299. But the best thing about the Hayabusa has to be the engine. The Hayabusa is all about the engine, and this one has been given a lot of new components such as valve springs, pistons, connecting rods, the cam chain tensioner, and a whole lot more. The transmission has also been reworked for better usability, and the clutch now has assist and slipper functions. The engine is a 1340cc engine, and now power is rated at 188 horsepower and 158 Nm of torque. To meet Euro 5 emission standards, Suzuki took the route that many are following. Less peak horsepower and more from the low end to about halfway to the red line. The new Hayabusa pumps out more torque and horsepower than its predecessor. However, for the final third of the power band, the previous motor beats it. Here's another fun fact for you guys. The Hayabusa engine is so legendary that it's actually being used in one-off race cars and aircraft as well. I mean, the technology was so advanced at that time, and even today, this is the most seamlessly, most amazingly refined, and most powerful engine you can find on any motorcycle. For 20 years, that's a very long time, and that just goes to show the legacy of this motorcycle. Even when it comes to the design, this bike is simply amazing. Now, another fun fact for you guys is this, that the Japanese designer who wanted to design this bike actually confessed that he wanted to make a bike that was grotesque in the way it looked. And that's because he wanted the bike to stand out and be timeless for a very, very long time. And well, as you can see right here, the bike still looks much the same as the original. It does get a few sharper lines and some better components as well. It's got 320mm floating discs up front, and it's got a 260mm disc at the back. It's also got 7-spoke cast aluminum wheels and 17-inch tires at both ends. Even the frame has been left unchanged, with only the subframe receiving a few minor updates. Now, we've been riding this bike on some beautiful twisty sections on our canyon stretch of road, which we've been riding a lot of bikes at recently. And I have to say that riding the Hayabusa here is like bringing a rocket launcher to a shooting range. I mean, you get the sense of power that it has, but really you don't understand the full potential of this weaponry right here. Nonetheless, what we can tell you is that this bike handles extremely well, at least for a bike of this size. However, on tight roads, you'll never forget you're riding a claimed 260 kilograms wet machine. On straightaways, you'll think the bike is weightless though. The suspension has also been updated, and it's now a KYB for the fork and shock, with the fork getting a new internal design. The suspension is also fully adjustable, with the stock setting about adding stability. The Hayabusa is such an easy bike to ride, and to make sure nothing terrible happens to you because of human error, the new Hayabusa gets tons of rider aids as well, such as traction control, wheelie control, engine braking control, launch control. There's even a speed limiter and a quick shifter response with 2 levels. You also get the traditional analog instrument clusters, but there's now a TFT enhanced panel between them. There's also new switchgear that helps the rider control the various rider aids. There's also a new key. So the new Hayabusa is essentially a lot better, but it's been made a little bit more practical. But I have to say that I've ridden every generation of the motorcycle, and I still believe that the first generation was the one that really stuck out the best in terms of the character that it had. This bike feels a little bit more gentle. In fact, when you put it in first gear, the acceleration isn't the quickest. It's only when you upshift to second gear where the full power kicks in and knocks you off your feet. The ergonomics have also been improved just a little bit though. You still have a lot of weight on your wrists, and this of course is a sports touring machine. So where it feels the best is obviously going to be on long straight highways where you can really munch miles and get the full effect of this engine right here. Then of course you have the exhaust note. The exhaust note is a fantastic sound to your ears, and you really feel great when you're riding this machine. Now what this bike really excels at is of course going on the highway and touring and munching those miles. You can also go to the track, and of course you can do some weekend rides. But the usability of the Hayabusa is also pretty good. It's a very comfortable machine, and it's actually more practical than a lot of those track bikes out there. In fact, we have Divyank with us to explain to you how this bike is to ride in the city, because Divyank is not really a big bike rider. In fact, the biggest bike that he's ridden is probably a 600cc.
Now, I've been riding the 2021 Suzuki Hayabusa for a few days now, and when I first saw the bike, when I received it at the dealership, I found it to be extremely intimidating. I mean, look at the size of the bike. But as soon as I got on it and I rode it for a few kilometers, it instantly became clear that this is one of the most approachable, biggest bikes out there. I mean, I got so comfortable riding it so quickly, and because of all the new rider aids that have been introduced on this generation, the bike has become so user-friendly, and even beginners can have a good time riding this bike. Now, there are a few things that I noticed while riding it in the city. For example, it's a 1340cc engine, so it will generate a lot of heat, and you can certainly feel that heat coming out of the side panels. And this exposed frame that you see right here, this traps all the heat, and it becomes really hot when you've been riding the bike for a few hours. And whenever you stop at a signal, you'll feel the heat on your inner thighs. But that's something that you'll have to get used to. Now, another thing that I noticed while riding this bike is this rather odd shape of the fuel tank. It's not odd per se, but I noticed that when you turn the handle for a full lock, you notice that there's no space for your elbows, and while taking a U-turn, this might disbalance you at times. So my suggestion for this is that when you're doing a full lock, just spread your arms out a little bit so that you have more control of the bike while taking the turn. Now, as I said earlier, this bike is extremely approachable, really sure-footed, and it handles like a dream. So even beginners can have a good time pushing it to the limit. And all I can say about riding it in the city is that there are a few things that you'll have to get used to, but in the end, the engine, the electronics, and the overall package is going to put a big smile on your face every time you ride this bike.
Now, of course, all these updates make the new Hayabusa a lot better than its predecessor. In fact, the price has also gone up by about rupees 2 lakh, and it's now about 16.4 lakh rupees ex-showroom. That's actually not a bad price for this machine. It has everything you could ever ask for, and it's still got that reputation that is unmatched across the entire industry. So, what are you waiting for? Go out and get a test drive for the all-new Hayabusa.